The sun was blazing over the city of Ibadan, and inside the grand white tent, everything screamed perfection. Rows of white chairs, peach and gold decorations, a massive cake that stood like a tower of dreams. This was the wedding everyone was waiting for. The union of Derek and Keoma. Guests whispered about how perfect they were, how Derek, the quiet, reserved entrepreneur, had finally found someone who brought him out of his shell. Keoma, radiant in her custom-designed gown, looked like a queen stepping out of a fairy tale. Her smile lit up the whole place. But Derek? He was stiff, nervous, sweating through his fitted cream agbada. Everyone assumed it was just wedding day jitters. They were wrong. 3 hours earlier, Derek had been sitting alone in the groom's suite, staring at a photo on his phone. Not of Keoma, but of a woman named Lola. The message attached had arrived at 4:13 a.m. "You need to know the truth before you say I do. Lola." His heart dropped the moment he saw the name. He knew Lola only as someone Keoma once called a friend, barely ever mentioned. But the photo told another story. Keoma, Lola, side by side, holding hands, in love. The caption below the photo made Derek's skin crawl. "Ask your fiancée about our engagement and why she never told you we were more than friends." Derek sat frozen. Sweat poured down his back. He couldn't breathe. He had waited all his life for love that made sense. Keoma had been that calm in the storm. But if what he just saw was real, his entire love story was built on a lie. Derek couldn't sit still. The weight of the message, the photo, the implication, all of it pressed against his chest like bricks. He stared at the screen, rereading Lola's words over and over again. He needed answers. But where was the space for confrontation on his own wedding day? A knock on the door snapped him back. "Bro, it's time," his cousin Chuka said, peeking in. "You ready to change your life?" Derek forced a smile and nodded, slipping the phone into his pocket. But his mind? Miles away. He walked into the ceremony like a ghost. Music blared, guests cheered, and cameras flashed, but Derek was in another world. Then she appeared. Keoma, glowing, graceful, a vision. The crowd gasped as she took slow, elegant steps toward him. She looked him in the eyes and smiled. That smile, the one he once thought was his safety. But all he saw now was questions. He took her hand with trembling fingers. The officiating pastor cleared his throat and began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Derek and Keoma." Derek barely heard a word. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again. He pulled it out subtly. Another message from Lola. "You deserve to know who you're marrying before it's too late." Attached. A voice note. He hesitated, then pressed play. Lola's voice came through, breathy and calm. "Keoma and I were engaged for almost 2 years. We didn't end things. She just disappeared. Moved cities, changed her number. No explanation. I only found out she was marrying you through a mutual friend. I thought maybe you knew. But if you didn't, you need to ask yourself who she really is." Derek felt his legs weaken. Sweat formed on his forehead. Keoma whispered, "Are you okay?" He nodded quickly, but inside everything was falling apart. What kind of person runs from a whole engagement? And more importantly, why hide it? Derek's mind raced. He stood at the altar, everyone watching, the pastor's words fading into the background like distant echoes. He looked at Keoma again. Her eyes sparkled. Her hands were steady. But now, he couldn't unsee the mask. He leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "We need to talk." Now. She frowned, confused. "Derek, what's wrong?" "I said we need to talk, privately." The pastor paused. The guests murmured. Keoma looked around nervously. Can't it wait? No. He turned to the pastor. Please, just give us a moment. Without waiting, he gently pulled Kioma away from the center, through a side exit of the tent, and into the garden behind the venue. She was flustered. You're scaring me. What is this? He took out his phone, opened the photo, played the voice note. Kioma's face changed. The blood drained from her cheeks. She stepped back. Where did you get that? So it's true? He asked. You were engaged to Lola? And you never told me? Kioma's lips trembled. It was years ago. It didn't matter anymore. Didn't matter? He hissed. You planned to marry me while burying your past like a corpse? She hurt me, Kioma said, tears forming. She broke me. I had to disappear, start over. And lie your way into a new life? I didn't lie, she cried. I didn't want to lose you. Derek shook his head slowly. That was the moment he knew. He had to choose between the fantasy he thought he had, or the truth that stood right in front of him. If you were Derek, would you walk away or forgive her on the spot? Subscribe, hit the bell, and stick around. Because the next part reveals a decision no one saw coming. Kioma stood silently, her shoulders trembling, the weight of years crashing down on her. Derek stared at her, caught between heartbreak and disbelief. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I just wanted to finally be loved without being judged. Derek turned away, fists clenched. She was part of your life, he said coldly. But you didn't just hide her. You erased her, from your story, from mine. Kioma stepped forward. Because I was ashamed. Of what? Of who I used to be. She dropped her gaze. I loved Lola, and when she left me, I collapsed. I couldn't breathe. My parents disowned me. My church shunned me. I ran because I didn't want to die. Derek's breath caught. It wasn't the betrayal that shook him. It was the depth of her pain. He had imagined a scandal. A betrayal. But what he saw now was a woman who had survived. I was going to tell you, she said. But every time I looked at you, I told myself, not today. Then it became too late, too dangerous. He didn't speak. His silence said more than anger ever could. Finally, she asked, so what happens now? And he looked her in the eyes. I don't know. They stood there in the garden, the sound of distant drums and guests buzzing like background noise. A celebration paused, a promise shattered, a love tested. But even in the storm, there was still something, not clarity, not closure. Just a raw, heavy moment between two people, facing who they truly were. Inside the tent, the guests whispered. Some had started to leave, others waited, unsure whether they were witnessing the end of a love story or the beginning of a real one. Back in the garden, Kioma sat on a stone bench, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Derek paced a few steps away, rubbing his temples. Minutes passed like hours. Then Kioma said, barely audible, "If you want to call it off, I'll understand." Derek stopped walking. "I didn't come here today to embarrass you," he said, "but I also didn't come here to marry a lie." Kioma looked up at him, her eyes tired, defeated. "But I know now," he continued, "that you didn't lie because you're cruel. You lied because you were scared." Silence. "I don't excuse it," he added, "but I understand it." Kioma swallowed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, maybe we don't need a perfect story to have a true one." Her eyes widened. "You'd still marry me?" He sighed. "I'd still choose you, but not today." She blinked. He walked over, crouched in front of her. "We both have healing to do. You need to stop running from your past, and I need to stop chasing a fantasy." Kioma nodded slowly, tears fresh in her eyes. "Let's call off the wedding," he said gently. "Not our love, just the pressure to perform it today." And just like that, the wedding was over. No drama, no shouting, just two people choosing honesty over performance. The next morning, the tent was gone. The cake was returned, the food distributed to an orphanage. The guests, confused, curious, some called it a disaster. But for Derek and Keoma, it was the first morning they woke up free. Not married, not broken, just honest. They went for a walk, no photographers, no music, just the sound of their footsteps on quiet pavement. "I'm scared," Keoma admitted, holding his hand. "So am I," Derek replied. "But now we're scared. Together." Over the next few weeks, they began real conversations about the past, about love, about truth. They went to counseling. They reintroduced themselves, not as groom and bride, but as Derek and Keoma. And for the first time, it felt real. Months later, they hosted a small dinner. Just close friends, no cameras, no stages. At the end of the night, Derek raised his glass and said, "We didn't say I do that day, but every day since, we've said I still do. And to me, that's even better." Everyone smiled. Some teared up. They had stopped a wedding, but maybe they had saved a marriage before it began. Now here's a question only you can answer. If someone hides a painful truth to protect their heart, does it make them a liar or just human? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's still figuring out what love really means.